That scathing assessment laid out before the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Critics hitting Democrats who sit on that committee. Only 9 of their 23 members even showed up. 13 U.S. service members were killed in a suicide bombing near the Kabul airport during those evacuation efforts. Republican Congressman Cory Mills of Florida is on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and he did show up. Welcome to you, Congressman.
Thank you so much for having me.
What did you make of those Democrats just blowing off such an important hearing?
Well, it just shows again what their priorities are when they couldn't even be troubled to come and do their jobs, to ask the pertinent questions, to ensure that we could get policy change. Some of the things that Chairman Mark Milley had made comments on, which I really agree with, is changing policy so that when a NEO is conducted, that the DOD can actually take a leading edge on this. Because right now, they don't know whether it's the ambassador, whether it's the Secretary of State, whether it's the ground commanders, and so there's a lot of confusion in all this. And those types of bits of information that Chairman Mark Milley and General McKenzie are able to put in place does help us to prevent this in the future. And the fact that the Democrats couldn't even be there to evaluate 13 brave heroes who lost their lives and how we can prevent this in the future, it's really such a shame.
Emotions were certainly running high in that hearing room yesterday. And after intense pressure from GOP lawmakers, the D.C. Attorney General, this happened overnight, decided to drop the charges against the Gold Star father, Steve Nakui. His son, Kareem, was one of those 13 service members killed in the Abbey Gate attack. Steve was charged after heckling the president, you'll remember, during the State of the Union address.
30%. 30% they went up.
Congressman Darrell Issa, one of those Republicans who pushed against the changes.
Yes, he said something without a microphone, and he was ushered away, but it did not effectively stop it. And so it's certainly within the discretion to say that they see no reason for charges. These Gold Star families and the loved ones they lost are examples of a loss that all of us have to not just give lip service to, but give our time to.
And sources did tell us that Steve Nakui cried when Congressman Issa told him that those charges were indeed dropped. Nakui lost one son in the Abbey Gate bombing. Then another one of his sons, Dakota Halverson, committed suicide about a year later from grief over the loss. Thank God those charges have been dropped. Many lawmakers were pushing for this to happen. My only question is, why did it take so long?
Well, it's such a shame. I consider Steve to be a good friend, as have I kind of gotten this friendship with Paula Noss and the other families that were a part of this horrific incident that occurred on August 26th. But the charges should have never have been brought to begin with. If you wanted to usher him out for disruption, that's one thing. But the idea that you're going to try and make charges on a grieving father who has lost both of his sons and who rightfully is angry because there's been no accountability, not to mention the fact that through 2 State of the Union addresses, President Biden not once has acknowledged these families or those 13 brave heroes. We had to actually shame him into even saying Laken Riley's name, which he pronounced as Lincoln Riley. And so when you think about the anger and the grief and the fact that there's been no closure as to what actually caused these 13 to lose their lives in Abbey Gate, it's understandable that Steve and the rest of the families are, audibly upset.
We had a Gold Star father on our program yesterday afternoon, and you just grieve with these families and you feel their pain, their intense pain they live with every single day, Congressman, for sure. Meanwhile, there are very real fears, Congressman. The crisis in Haiti could turn into another Afghanistan. Right now, some 1,000 Americans, we are told, are stuck in that country, mired in chaos and violence. The State Department says it's, quote, exploring new ways to get them out. So far, it's only sent one chartered rescue flight in. Congressman Mills, you have once again stepped up like you did in Afghanistan and in Israel earlier this year. You've headed 2 rescue missions now and gotten 23 Americans out of Haiti. That includes a 2-month-old baby and a 3-year-old girl. Thank you for what you're doing. Tell us why you're doing it.
Well, look, the one thing that I want to try and do is explain that it doesn't matter what district you're from, what state you're from, what your political affiliation, gender, race, belief. If you're an American, the elected officials should be doing everything they can to ensure your safety and security. I'm not going to let someone, in the Oval Office define what America truly stands for. Back when we used to be a proud nation, when you had that blue passport, that's all it took. And that meant something to be an American. And so we've seen where through trials that we have to shame this administration into doing their job. The same thing happened in Israel when by the time we had 96 people that we had ground evac, that was when they finally sent their first charter in. And meanwhile, other nations had already sent in, like the Philippines and Mexico, and all the others had already came in and gotten their people out of Benghazi. We knew it was the same situation here. But look at the actual progress. They went from last week, we have no plans and we have no intent to evacuate, to now we're exploring options and sending an aircraft. And the reason is because that I have to put enough pressure on them through great journalism like you're doing right now that actually gets the message out that if I can do it on my own with just a small team of those who I've known for a long time or former special operations, then how can the whole of government and the Biden administration not do the same thing to rescue Americans that are stuck beyond?
Congressman, we've been showing these pictures of your rescue missions and those Americans that you've been able to get out. You are an incredible American. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much. God bless.
Good to have you on. Meanwhile, a Trump-backed